What's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another edition of Set Bet Spike right here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney and the Eric Young here with you. And we're going to preview the AFC East on today's episode of Set Bet Spike, Game Plus Network, FTN Network, at the Eric Young, at Chris Meaney. We are just a handful of days away, Eric. You and I are going to get together in New York at the Sirius XM Fantasy Studios. We are going to take part in a live draft. Yep. Courtesy of Jake Seeley, the Flex Leagues. I think we chatted last week. Jake's in the 7 spot. I'm in the 8 spot, and you're in the 9 spot. I know you won't share any secrets of what you're going to do in that 9 spot, but looking forward to the draft.
I can say, and this goes for most drafts, like having a plan of who you're going to take is silly. Like, you can have an idea, but the truth is someone in those first couple picks is going to do something you're just like, what? Especially in experts drafts, like a lot of guys are like, especially one like this, like it's not for a bunch of money, so they're experimenting, they're trying different things. Everybody's good, so you gotta make a move, right? Like, you can't just go status quo or you're not going to win. If you're in like a super competitive league, you know this. Like there's no weak link along the way, so you've got to reach for somebody in those later rounds that's going to outdo his draft spot, right? Like kind of like a high risk player. You got to make some kind of a move like that, or you're just going to be in the mushy middle. And I mean, if you're not first, you're last, buddy.
It's true. I have a pretty good idea of how I'm going to start. I feel like I'm going to be able to get whatever player I want at 8. I'm back and forth between AJ or Nick Chubb. I think I'll do one of those two guys at 8. I don't think either of them will be available to me on the way back. I think there's a possibility maybe AJ. But before we get into the teams, man, the running backs, there's been a lot of news in the NFL with running backs and top tier running backs over the last little bit. I mean, CMC and Eckler, sure, lock and loaded. We talked about Bijan and people taking a pick on him at 8th overall. I've seen him go as high as 5th overall. It hasn't played a snap in the NFL. But then Saquon, he got his contract, so I think we feel pretty decent about Saquon now. Josh Jacobs, we're uncertain about Josh Jacobs. With Rhamondre Stevenson, when we dive into this division, Rhamondre Stevenson and Breece Hall are currently going as top 12 running backs, but both teams are rumored to bring in veteran running backs, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott. Both of those backs have visited New England Patriots over the past week and a half. There's rumors that Dalvin Cook is linked to the Jets. I mean, he went to camp. Robert Saleh's talking him up. Loved his meeting with Dalvin Cook. So those two running backs could take hits. I guess that bumps up Derrick Henry a little bit more. Tony Pollard, like, this is his first year as a starter, coming off a significant injury. There's a lot of question marks. And then Jonathan Taylor, all of a sudden, like, requesting a trade, wants to get paid. Bad blood between the teams, or between him and the organization. Reports that the Colts were going to send him on the non-injured list, like, wouldn't even play. Jeez, my goodness. Like, what do you make of these? And that's why I'm thinking, like, maybe I'll just take Chubb at 8, because I have so many question marks about these other running backs. If I avoided the running back position in my first 2 picks, I'm living in a range where I'm not super comfortable with these guys being my top dogs. What have you made with some of these rumors lately, and in particular, Jonathan Taylor? Would you touch him in draft Taylor? If you were drafting today, would you draft Jonathan Taylor?
So I'd have to look, but I'm almost 100% sure he was my first pick in the Scott Fish Bowl. So that's great for me. Might not play a single down all year. That would really surprise me. What's the old song? Mama, don't let your sons grow up to be running backs. Like,
showed it to the ranch. Yeah.
It's a brutal time to be. I mean, if I played football, that would have been the position I probably would have played. That's the position I would have wanted to play. I played rugby, and I was basically the equivalent of a running back on the rugby field. I understand the financial part of it, right? Like, these guys don't last. That's been proven, right? And I think average length of career is 4 or 5 years. So paying them after their, second and third year is financial stupidity. You can't blame the teams for that. They have the information, but the truth is like, a really good running back can make the difference. This is a passing league. They want it to be a passing league. They want them to score 1 million touchdowns. That's why you can't touch the quarterbacks anymore. Like, it's almost impossible to defend. That's what the NFL wants. and running the ball for 4 or 5 yards at a time and falling into each other is not super fun. I love it. It's my favorite part of football. But an average fan, they don't want to see that. And backs are just going to continue to not get paid. It's just how it's going to be. And you're seeing it with Taylor. What did Irsay say? He said Jonathan Taylor could disappear from the NFL and no one would care. That's the best. The best.
He said died.
Did he say die?
He said I could die or Taylor could die or it didn't matter. But he did say the word like die. He didn't say disappear. He said die. Like either of these guys could die. And I get what he was saying. Like
than I originally thought. Right? Like I mean it's insane.
I get it. It's the Colts and it's an organization. It's the NFL. I understand what he was trying to say. Like we could be we could disappear and we would still go on. The NFL would be great. The Colts would be great. I totally get it. But he did toss out the word died, which I thought was interesting. All right. So just quickly, we're going to get into the teams here. Would you drafted Taylor? You already did it. So maybe you wouldn't. But if you were sitting there in the middle of the second round and Jonathan Taylor is still on the board, are you taking him?
I've moved him down. I did it yesterday. I'm always, if something happens, I'll go in. I got this draft kit that I use, and I go in and I slit him down. So I got him below Bijan, Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne. I probably would move him below Stevenson. The news that Breece Hall is could possibly be ready. Nobody knows. And I've said this, I think, on every show. It's way too early to be doing this and drafting teams because there's lots of people right now. I mean, obviously, there's probably tens of thousands of best ball leagues where Jonathan Taylor was taken in the first 10 picks. True?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And
for sure.
If things continue on this path, that person couldn't possibly win. It's over. It's over.
Yeah. I'm out. I said this yesterday on Mean Streets. I'm just out on him and Jacobs. I'm not drafting Rhamondre or Breece Hall at the moment. I am worried that those teams are going to bring in veteran backs, and it's just going to muddy the waters a little bit. So Jonathan Taylor is bumped down just a touch. We have free tools over at FTNFantasy.com. We have a ton of free tools. We have a ton of amazing tools, actually, and rankings and projections. It's all available over at FTNFantasy.com. My rankings updated every other day, actually. But as a team, we're updating them at least once a week. And we have tools that show where these players are moving up and down draft boards. And currently, Bijan Robinson has RB3 over at Underdog Fantasy. Nick Chubb is RB4. Saquon Barkley is RB5. Jonathan Taylor is bumped down to RB6, pick 18.8 on average. And I bet you when we talk in a couple days, Tony Pollard will move ahead of him, and Derrick Henry has moved up as well. He was 24.5 when we did the AFC South division preview, and we talked about the Tennessee Titans. So Taylor is even moving up just a touch. Good morning. Rum boys in the house. Morning, fellas. Morning to you. Fade Taylor. I feel like we've been saying it. Yes, I think you just have to. I always hear people, you can't win or lose your fantasy football championship or your league in the first couple rounds, or you can't lose it in the first couple weeks. It's all about the stretch run. But I think you can lose it. You can get yourself in a tough spot if you drafted a Taylor or a Josh Jacobs, and these guys are not playing. You're missing your RB1 for quite some time. So easy fade for now. If I saw Taylor into the third round, mid-third, I probably would definitely pull the trigger on him there in certain situations, certainly in best ball formats, maybe not in high stakes like that. Let's get after it. Where do you want to start? What team do you want to start here in the AFC in the East? Bills, Jets, Dolphins, Pats. Where do you want to start?
Let's start, because we always start with a good team. Let's start with Pats. I think they're the weakest team in the league, but they're still coached by Bill Belichick, right? That's still a thing. They actually have a real offensive coordinator. I think Mac Jones is a better quarterback than he showed last year. I don't think he's a superstar by any means, but I think he's a very capable quarterback. And we're gonna see. I mean, they haven't done anything. They obviously interested in Dalvin Cook, but I think he's leaning Jets. They bring in Fournette. I mean, I was kind of hoping that Pierre Strong was going to turn into a thing, a new pass catcher for them to be showcased. Belichick loves having that pass catching back. We've seen like mediocre players put up big fantasy seasons playing for the Patriots. So there's lots of players that are interesting. I mean, is Juju going to be a guy in the slot? Is he going to be kind of this bigger, taller, maybe not as fast version of Wes Welker all over again? Gesicki, is he going to be, the new Gronk or new Aaron Hernandez, stretching the seam, catching a bunch of passes? I feel like he's made for that, right? Like that's the kind of player he is, and he could be tight end gold playing for the Patriots, maybe. But there is a lot of questions.
There's a ton of questions. I think you said it like off the top. The biggest thing about this Patriots squad is that they have an offensive coordinator and Bill O'Brien, who's back now with New England, who did some good things with the Patriots before. I heard Bill Belichick talk yesterday on NFL Live about what he brings to the table. Of course, he has experience with Bill Belichick, of course, for years in New England, has experience as a head coach with the Texans, and did some good things with the Texans before they went downhill in a hurry. But they did go to the playoffs, and they did have a pretty solid offense at one point, with Hopkins and Will Fuller and Deshaun. And then he coached in college too, so he's learned a couple things, and this could be like a little bit of a college offense here in New England. Last year was just a complete mess, man, with Patricia as a defensive guy, being an offensive guy. Like they just had all these, they didn't replace Josh McDaniels, and it was an absolute disaster, and it was a disaster for everybody, really. It was a disaster for Mac Jones. We saw Billy Zappi get in under center. I actually think we could see Zappi have some starts this year as well if Mac Jones does struggle. I think that he's going to have not a short leash, but I think he's going to be given at least half the season to kind of see exactly if this offense can kind of get going here, and if he can get back to some of the good things that he did as a rookie, some play action, very accurate passer. We'll see what happens there. But I don't believe in this offense at all. I don't think it's going to be any good. I think the defense is going to keep them in games. It's a really tough division, of course. It's a tough conference. I don't view this team as a playoff squad, and I haven't rolled through their schedule. I'm going to bring it up, and you and I are going to have a little fun experiment here. We're going to roll through the schedule and see if we can give them, 8 wins here. But they're long shots to win the division at 9-1, 35-1 to win the conference, and they are 66-1 to win the Super Bowl. They start the season at home. They're going to honor Tom Brady at home against the Eagles, so a tough spot for them. Then at home week 2 against Miami, another tough game. Week 3 in New York to take on the Jets. Week 4 in Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Week 5 against the Saints. So the first 5 games are extremely tough. They could start 0-5, Philly, Miami, the Jets, Dallas, and the Saints. Then they go to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. Then they're back home to play the Bills in Miami. So it's a really, like the first 7 weeks, they could only have maybe 1 or 2 wins. After Miami, it's Washington and the Colts, 2 winnable games before the bye, out of the bye against the Giants. And then they wrap up very tough again. Like, listen to this finish. After the Giants, which is on the road for them, they'll go Chargers in Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers, Kansas City in Denver to take on the Broncos, in Buffalo to take on the Bills, and then home against the Jets. They may only win like 4 or 5 games. And I understand that Bill Belichick is a great coach and he's going to get the best out of his guys.
Sure.
But I just have so many questions about everything on this squad. Like Juju Smith-Schuster, I think he's a safe wide receiver. He is going to play in the slot. He could catch 75 passes, be a safety valve there for Mac Jones. I don't think there's a high ceiling. I think if you're in a PPR league and this guy is falling, as you see, wide receiver 55, outside pick 115, maybe he's your 5th wide receiver. You can plug him in as your wide receiver 3 or flex in a PPR league and get by. But he didn't score a lot of touchdowns in KC with a really good quarterback and a really good offense. He didn't really step up and show me that he can be an alpha wide receiver 1. I like Tyquan Thornton as an upside play here, and I'm not really into Devontae Parker. As a deep shot guy, sure. You have other guys on this depth chart that could potentially pop off at moments, Kendrick Bourne, but I don't feel like there's really even Gesicki at tight end 22. They still have Hunter Henry on the squad. Like, he's a good tight end. He didn't really get a lot of looks in Miami. Maybe he will in New England. Mac Jones has shown us that he leaned on the tight end a little bit here over the early part of his career inside the red zone, especially. and Mac Jones, I'm not taking any shots on him as quarterback 31 underdog. So there's not a lot of like here. Not gonna lie, EY. I really like Rhamondre Stevenson. I think that he has the upside to be a top 3 running back in fantasy. He was top 5 among backs in targets and catches. He overtook Damian Harris last year in terms of first down and second down. He got some goal line work. I already wrote him up as a target. Over at FTNFantasy.com, every Thursday, I've been writing 3 targets, and I'm moving up draft boards. I'm getting deeper and deeper. We'll get into some sleepers and some late-round picks. But I wrote Rhamondre as a great pick, I thought, in the 3rd, as somebody I'd be comfortable as my RB1. If I went wide receiver, Rhamondre, I would love that start. But I am absolutely worried that this team is going to bring somebody in because they signed James Robinson and they let him go. But when you bring in Leonard Fournette and you bring in Ezekiel Elliott, you bring in veteran, but you obviously... You want to scale it back. You either want to scale back Rhamondre or you don't believe in Pierre Strong, but you probably want to have a committee because most teams are going through committees. So yes or no, Rhamondre, I think you just avoid them because if they do bring in a Fournette or a Zeke, especially Zeke, if they bring in Zeke, he's getting all the goal line carries.
100%.
He is. He's been one of the best goal line backs in the league over the past couple of years, even though he's dropped he's had a bit of a decline in his giddy up. But also Fournette, like this guy, I think is more toast than Zeke, but I think he's a good pass catching back. He could steal some 3rd down catches and he could also steal some goal line work as well. So I think I got to avoid him, man. I think I got to fade Rhamondre, and it kills me because I love him. He's so good.
Yeah, I like him too. I think it depends, right? It just depends on what happens in front of you at the draft. We're seeing this all over in drafts. Wide receivers going off early, right? Travis Kelce undoubtedly going in the 1st round. Guys like Hurts, Mahomes, Allen, those guys are being pushed up draft boards, are going way earlier. I mean, like how many years has it been like just wait on quarterback? I played a lot of 2 quarterback leagues. Like those guys, all 3 of those guys go in the 1st round, right? Undoubtedly.
Right.
With Stevenson, he could change your team. He could change your fortunes if they don't sign somebody. I believe they're going to sign somebody.
Me too.
And this has been a thing in New England as long as Belichick's been a coach. Throw a dart, right? I mean,
they've used multiple backs. They've
done this for years, and I've avoided drafting them no matter how good they are because they're not going to get the volume. And you can say whatever you want about narrative, this and that, and you're guessing. Volume is king, period, at the running back position. It doesn't matter how good Rhamondre Stevenson is if he's touching the ball 140 times in a season.
I think if Fournette signed there, I would still be in on. As I mentioned, I would still be in on Rhamondre because I just think talent.
That means that they don't believe in Pierre Strong. Right?
Yeah, I just think he would.
Signals.
I still think he'd get like 7% of the touches, and then he would become a bit of a discount because he would fall down a little bit. Troy's in the house and says, "Who would you take with the 2nd overall pick in fantasy football this season?" Let's say Justin Jefferson is off the board.
Yep.
And you're up on the clock. Who you picking?
Christian McCaffrey.
CMC. Okay. I would pick.
There's just, I get health. I get all that stuff.
He played full season last year.
Played a full season last year. It is the perfect system for who he is and what he does. It's very clear from last season that Shanahan loves him. It's very clear that he can do all of the things that they're asking him to do. And who else is going to touch it there at the running back position?
No one. Elijah will get some touches, but it's CMC. And even what I said with Jake, like you may not get the same type of usage with CMC the Carolina days, like 23, 25 opportunities, but he doesn't need that in this offense. No, they don't want to do that. And he actually doesn't need it. He can
Nobody does that in San
touches
Francisco.
a game, and he can get 100+ total yards and a touchdown a game. So, I mean, I would never fight anybody on the CMC pick. I'm just alpha wide receiver all day.
And also
Blake
for
in the
Troy,
house.
To answer Troy, it's impossible to say, right? Because I don't know the scoring, right? That every league is different. If we're talking,
just say that's a old half point PPR one quarterback. If it's a super flex, maybe you're thinking about Josh Allen or Hurts or Mahomes, but you got CMC there. And what we talked about with the running backs, I mean, I don't think it's a bad call, right? To go with CMC there, but I'm just kind of alpha. early drafts and things change all the time, right? You always say it's so early. It's so early. I've been doing this for content.
Yep.
I have been taking wide receivers nonstop without even thinking about it. I've done it.
You and a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think this year is different, and it's becoming even more of a wide receiver thing. I did a TikTok video 2 months ago on how the first round, I thought the first round should go. And I believe I put maybe 3 running backs there, and everybody just freaked out at me. That's not how you draft. That's not how you draft. And now this is what I'm seeing in ADPs. Best ball is different. People want to get their alpha wide receivers. They want to get their stacks. It's redraft is a little bit different. They want to get their bell cow running backs, and I totally get that. But with the what we led with off the top of the show with the question marks around these running backs and Breece Hall and Rhamondre and Taylor and Josh Jacobs, like those are Tony Pollard. You can put him in there too. I put him in the group. Yeah, he got franchise tag. We've never seen. He's one game in his NFL career with 20 carries. One. That's it.
Right.
Like he was a great back last year and explosive, and I like him. And I view if he is the only back there in Dallas, I think he's in for a heck of a season. But they also may bring somebody in as well. It's very possible. But you could start your draft with a alpha wide receiver and potentially a Derrick Henry at the end of the second as well. And I think that would be a really good start.
Yes, please.
Blake's got a question here. Out of these players, which 3 would you keep for this year per position? So Watson, Fields, Hall, Pollard, Amari Cooper, Ridley, Andrews in an 8-team standard league. So here's the old school, no points for catches. This is how I started fantasy. Fields.
Yeah, I think that's undoubtedly.
Fields you're keeping. So 1 player per position. Like I still view Hall like this is a keeper league. Breece Hall, maybe Pollard has a better season this year, but Breece Hall, I think, is in for a better career. Am I wrong to think that? I feel like I'd rather Breece Hall.
Is it keeping just this year? If it's just this year, I think I'm probably Fields.
You go Pollard. Yeah.
I'm Fields, Pollard, and I think probably Andrews because I view him very highly. And I think after him, you might as well just wait till the last 2 picks and take 2 random guys. And pray.
Yeah, especially if they're, in an 8-team league, you got to think most people are just going to rock 1 tight end. The top eight tight ends, there certainly is an advantage to have an Andrews, a Kelsey, and a Hawkinson, and you get a Kittle. You're still going to get yourself a pretty good tight end. I probably would lean with Cooper or Ridley personally, because again, I just like wide receivers. So Fields and this year Pollard over Hall, but Hall is a long term, depending on how your league kind of shapes out there, Blake. But I don't think you can go wrong here with any of these selections, but we both are in on Fields and the rushing floor that he brings to the table. Plus, I think he can improve as a passer, just like Allen and Hurts did when they brought in alphas.
Yep.
Wide receiver all day. And if Burrow comes back healthy, Chase Stock returns, so it's rightful place. Yeah, I've recently, they're all in the same tier for me, Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill, along with Justin Jefferson and Chase. But if I was drafting today, given the status of Joe Burrow and the calf injury, I probably would lean with Kupp or Tyreek Hill there, and Kupp over Hill. Let's get into we'll do the Bills. Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills here, right? You mentioned Josh Allen and quarterbacks creeping up. We got a 10.5 win total here for the Bills Mafia, plus 130 to win the AFC East, and we also have 5-1 for them to win the conference and 9-1 for them to win the Super Bowl. Look at some of their weapons here. They did not bring in another alpha wide receiver, but they did draft Dalton Kincaid, who's currently going as tight end 12, 131 on average. Khalil Shakir is a guy that I like. He's a sneaky little late round dart throw there. Gabe Davis, this time last year, was going roughly wide receiver 20, 23, 24. Disappointed everybody. I think the expectations were extremely high, especially after that 4-touchdown game he had in the playoffs against the Chiefs. Now I view him as a value. Last year he was going to touch early, but he wasn't super disappointing. He finished as a wide receiver 27. You drafted him as a wide receiver 3. He was a wide receiver 3. You wanted him to be a high-end 3 or a low-end 2. It just didn't work out. Now you're getting a bit of a discount. Stephon Diggs, he's one of the alpha wide receivers going early in drafts. Pick 8 on average, wide receiver 5. Damian Harris now moves over from New England to Buffalo. James Cook, Dalvin's brother, as RB31, and Josh Allen, he was first in quarterback rankings, back-to-back years. And last year, the suspended game, but he was right there with Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes. But it was Hurts who was first in fantasy points per game. But Josh Allen has been really the most consistent quarterback in fantasy football. I mean, him and Mahomes, but he gives you more of a rushing floor there with Josh Allen. And you're a big Josh Allen fan. I remember you talked about taking him early last year in the same boat. Are you trying to get Josh Allen early again? If he's there in the second round, he will be there for you in the second round in flex. So you're going to pull the trigger on JA?
I would think about it because of the massive floor, right? Like the rushing, and they're going to say, we brought in these, two big backs and Damian Harris and Latavius Murray because they want to run the ball better. They haven't been good at it. And I don't think that's going to take away from Josh Allen. He's going to run. It's part of his game. He's a big athlete, they don't want him running wild all the time. Like I can just, as a coach and as an owner, like every time he's running some kind of unscripted run, they're probably just closing their eyes and hoping that he doesn't get hurt. But he's proven to be very durable for how he plays. Obviously very good at the goal line. That's not going to go away. Like him sneaking the ball and rushing the ball at the goal line it seems almost automatic at this point. Love the player. Obviously, when they got Stephon Diggs, the narrative on him that he can't throw and he's not accurate and can't throw down the field, that all changed, right? And that all changed. You brought up Sharif. Like, I really like him. I think it's kind of what they were missing last season. They didn't have that Cole Beasley, that kind of short area target guy, the guy that he could check down to. I know everyone's very high on Kincaid. Go ahead. I'm not taking him where he's going and where he's being drafted. He's a rookie tight end. Literally 2 times in the last decade, there's been a good rookie tight end. Twice. So,
and they also have one on the squad at Dawson Knox.
Like right. They have Dawson Knox, who's a much better blocker, who's not going to come off the field. They've got Khalil Shakir. Gabe Davis, in my opinion, right now, might be the greatest value in the draft. He was hurt and wasn't right for the most of the year, right? Do you remember how high he was going last year? What has changed?
Yeah.
What has changed to his physical profile? Nothing.
Yeah,
the only thing that's changed is he's not hurt.
Yeah, I think maybe more people thought, myself included, I thought he would get more work. He was just like a 3 or 4 target per game type of dude and mostly deep shots, which is what you want. I mean, this offense is really good. Josh Allen was also hurt. Like he's turned the ball over a ton inside the red zone. He dealt with an elbow injury. So if he is completely healthy, maybe there's a little bit more room to grow there for Gabe Davis. But he did struggle with some drops as well. But I do agree with you. I think he's a pretty good value. I mean, it's like a stock market. It was a little high last year. Yep. Yes. Maybe there's more room to grow. He still has a 6.5 touchdown prop. I think he can get another, 7 to 8 touchdowns this season. I do like the offense. It's going to be a different offense. I think they're going to run more 12. Like it's just, they're going to have double tight end sets. I think Kincaid is going to be a heck of a player in the league. I think, honestly, I don't want to put these expectations.
No doubt.
I'm with you. I think like too early in drafts, rookie tight end. Yeah, he's going to play kind of like a slot wide out. He's going to have some soft coverage, but I just feel like Knox is there. Diggs is there. It's just too much going on at the moment for me to take him as 10 and 12, which you saw on that board. I'm just not going to do it.
There's only one football.
Yeah. But he does, like when I watch him, I don't want to put this expectations on him. He does remind me a little bit of Travis Kelce. Like he reminds me of a guy that can just like, he's a freak with the ball in his hands. Yep. And he's good, man. He's going to be I like the pick. I wanted the Bills. Like I thought if the Bills were going to be, and I still view them as Super Bowl contenders, but I still think like this team needs another wide receiver. Like I wanted them to get Hopkins. I don't know if they can go toe to toe with the Chiefs or the Jags now offensively, and the Bengals like just cooked them last year in Buffalo. So I think the defense is improved. I like the Floyd pickup. Leonard, I think like him and Vaughn back together again. This is a team that really missed Von Miller last year. They weren't able to get pressure off the quarterback when he went down. So I really like the front that they got going on there. So the defense is solid. The coaching is good. Allen's a good quarterback, but he does, like, as a passer, he's been very up and down, and he leads the NFL in turnover since 2020. He's got 53 in 49 games. That's a lot of turnovers. He threw a lot of interceptions, and he's been careless with the ball. But at the same time, he also leads everybody in total touchdowns, right? So it's
the Brett Favre thing, right? Like, you've got to, if you want to score touchdowns like that and you want to push play, you got to be a little wild. And I want my quarterback to be like that, right? Like, I don't want him playing super conservatively, especially in today's NFL. It's almost impossible to defend the pass. Quarterbacks aren't allowed to bump into you. Like, if after 5 yards, like, you can't touch the quarterback. This is all by design, right? The NFL wants the scoring to be up because they believe scoring equals ratings equal money. They don't care about anything else. That's what they care about. So for me, I love Josh Allen. I was a Buffalo Bills fan when I was a kid. They lost 3 Super Bowls. I cried. I stopped watching football for a couple of years. And then I picked the Tennessee Titans. And then in a weird fate stepped in and I ended up moving here. But I was a Tennessee Titans fan before I moved to Nashville. But I still follow the Bills. I love them. I love Josh Allen as a player. I think Damian Harris and even look at this Murray, for his escalated age, had a pretty good season last year. You know, he still can run between the tackles and bump into somebody and get 3 or 4 yards. And that's what I think they really missed. There wasn't a player on the field for them last year that could run the ball like that. And now
this is my other one issue with them. And for Josh Allen, before we move on from him, I mean, the rushing floor is 600, 500, 400, 700, 700, back-to-back seasons with 760 rushing yards, 763, 762.
It's such a
he's
bonus,
had at least
right?
6 rushing touchdowns in every season. He's got 38 rushing touchdowns in his 5 years in the NFL, 8, 9, 8, 6, and 7. But we do hear it every year. We've heard it more so this year, that they want to scale back. They don't want to have him running around, design runs, running inside the red zone. They want to keep him fresh and healthy because, not breaking any news, you're not going to win the Super Bowl without a healthy Josh Allen. And they have shown me that maybe they're thinking about that. I remember a playoff game against the Colts where they didn't have one rushing attempt in the first half. They've been too one-dimensional over the past years. They need to have more rushing in their game. So Cook is a guy they drafted last year, who a lot of people seem to like. And Damian Harris is a solid running back. He's not the same type of back as Cook. He's not going to catch any passes. He could be a goal line back. I think he's a pretty decent target here. Is RB38, pick 117 for the zero RB, hero RB people. You have a running back linked to a top 5 offense, arguably, and a guy who should pick up some goal line touches and be the goal line back inside this offense. So I think he's an okay little pick there in the middle rounds. Cook, I'm just not sure. I really just don't know. He grades pretty well. He was very efficient. He wasn't getting a lot of touches. I think he belongs in a tier with like Jerick McKinnon, DeAndre Swift, Antonio Gibson as guys that may only get 6 carries a game, but 12 to 15 touches, be a threat in the receiving yard game, and they're linked to good offenses. Maybe not so much Antonio Gibson, but the other guys that I mentioned are, and they could be decent RB2s in PPR formats. You have a preference before we move on from the Bills? Harris or Cook?
Yeah, I love James Cook this season. I do not believe he's going to be. I mean, from what they did in the offseason, he's not going to do a lot of running the ball on first and second down. But I don't think they want to do a ton of running. Like, this team has been a very competitive team with barely running the ball at all. Like you said, I can remember the game very vividly. They didn't run the ball one time in that first half, right? Like, that's not something that goes on.
Yeah.
It is way too one-dimensional. They're paying Damian Harris and Latavius Murray next to nothing. Maybe one of those guys gets cut. Like, I don't know. I would lean Damian Harris. I think he's going to be the kind of goal line thumper and short yardage guy. But all the drum beats coming out of training camp are James Cook. He looks unbelievable.
He's going to look way better than Damian Harris. He's going to look way better than Damian Harris because he can do more. He can catch, and he's explosive, and he's younger. Here's the projections, and they're pretty close. We'll move on from Buffalo. 149 points for James Cook. We have him for 145 rushing attempts. Singletary had 170, led the team last year. We have him for 684 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, 39 catches, in over 300 receiving yards. So we have him for roughly 1,000 total yards, 5 total touchdowns, 40 grabs. Pretty solid. Harris is not too far behind. 128 fantasy points, so 20 fewer, 10 fewer carries, 134 carries, 575 rushing yards, more touchdowns. We have him for 5. We have him for 28 receptions, which I don't know if he gets there. I don't know if this is a guy that catches 2 passes a game. It's possible. That's just under 200 receiving yards. So we have these guys pretty close in terms of volume, opportunities, and overall rushing yards, with a slight uptick for Damian Harris for rushing touchdowns, which I do believe is fair. Let's move over to the Jets. The Jets, of course, Aaron Rodgers, right? Aaron Rodgers is always in the news at this time of the season, in the news right now, going as quarterback 16. Breece Hall, as we mentioned a bunch here, is RB11. Michael Carter's on here as RB66. There's rumors that they're looking at Dalvin Cook, which really would crush Breece Hall's value, especially this season, coming off a significant injury. Garrett Wilson as wide receiver 8, picking up steam. Alan Lazard, wide receiver 53. Mecole Hardman as wide receiver 85. Tyler Conklin there as wide receiver 24. Rodgers has banned all of them back together. Nathaniel Hackett, who has spent a lot of time with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, was the head coach in Denver last year for a minute. Sean Payton called out Nathaniel Hackett last week, said it was the worst coaching thing ever. There's coach speak, there's a coach code out there. A lot of current athletes, former coaches, and former athletes thought it was a low blow. I don't think there's anything really wrong with it. Yeah, maybe it was a little bit of a low blow, as Sean Payton wasn't wrong. Maybe he's just trying to get his boys fired up. Like, listen, you're not that bad. It was awful. It was brutal, and we're gonna turn things around here. And I like what Rodgers said. He's stuck up for his guy, Nathaniel Hackett. He's taken on a leadership role like he should with the Jets. Hard Knocks. It's going to be an interesting season here in New York for sure. But Lazard, Cobb, Hackett, all these guys are back together again, but this time wearing the green Jets. What do you think of this team overall? Let's get into their assets. Win total 9.5, plus 270 to win the division, 10-1 to win the conference, 16-1 to win the Super Bowl. The defense is legit. Rodgers is coming off one of his worst seasons in the NFL. Like, he was throwing picks. He did not look like his old self. He was tossing picks inside the red zone. What do you make? Is it a legitimate Super Bowl team here? Do you think that they're going to win the division? Rocking the Jets for you, buddy.
Again, it hinges on the quarterback play. So if you're looking at the overall of Aaron Rodgers' career, you say last year was an anomaly. But at his age, was it, or was it the start of the decline? Like, how many times do you see this? Look at Peyton Manning, right? I mean, and like Rodgers, surely his neck isn't beat up like Peyton Manning and whatever, but he went from one of the best quarterbacks in the league to one of the worst quarterbacks in the league in a single season. And I don't think that's what's happening with Rodgers. I don't think he's Aaron Rodgers because he's just older. I don't think he's the same. But with Garrett Wilson, right? Like, if they get Dalvin Cook and with Breece Hall and Michael Carter, who I really like as a player, who was very good for them last year when Breece Hall went down. I think Conklin is being underdrafted. He showed last year that he's a part of this offense. And is a pretty reliable pass catcher. Like, I mean, I'm not drafting him in front of a lot of people, but I think getting him, with one of your last 3 picks could be a very good value here. This
2
could
tight
be
end leagues.
This could be a really potent offense, right? A very, very potent offense. I said at the end of last year that I think the Jets will be very, very competitive. And then they got Rodgers, right? Like, he's clearly the best quarterback that's played there, even right now in the last decade.
Dude, they almost made the playoffs with Mike White, Zach Wilson, and Joe Flacco. Right? Like, they didn't have to do a whole lot.
A few games out, right? A couple bounces.
They were right
in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I really like this team. I like the value all around. I think Breece Hall is going to continue to go down. And like you said, like, I mean, if he's there in the 3rd round, 4th round, like, are you going to go past Breece Hall?
I already got a couple shares, and I just
Me
felt
too.
like the team wasn't worried. I mean, I took them in the Independence Day Invitational on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. I took them in the second round, late second. I think I started like Chase and Brees Hall end of second. And then the Cook rumor started to happen. I thought he was going to be okay. So I'm a little hesitant to draft him right now in redraft leagues. I'm sure we're going to have some clarity as we get closer to the season. If they bring in another back, if he's on the field and he's taking some carries and hits, then maybe he's okay. I guess they don't really. I just feel like Carter and Izzy is a back that they drafted that they could just hold the fort down until he's ready to go. But maybe not. Like they're clearly all in at the moment. They start very tough at home Monday night against the Bills, right? Welcome to the division, Aaron Rodgers. Then in Dallas, then New England at home, maybe a little bit of a layup, but it is a division matchup and it's Bill Belichick after all. Then Kansas City, Denver, Philadelphia. So it's a really tough first 6 games. The schedule does open up for them, towards the middle part with a couple games like Vegas, and they got Atlanta, Houston on the squad, Washington. So I think that this team will be a playoff team. I'm not ready to say that they're going to win the division. I think I would give the benefit of the doubt to the Bills. But I tell you what, I really do like Garrett Wilson. I am here for a Garrett Wilson season. I think this guy could be the offensive player of the season. I would not be shocked at all. I'm buying in completely to the hype. I think he is that good of a player. He was my favorite coming out of the draft. And what he did last year with those quarterbacks that we talked about, right? Like Garrett Wilson had 1,100 yards, 83 grabs, and 147 targets, which were the 6th most, the targets. And he still had 1,100 yards. Like half of those balls were not even close to being catchable. Like when you look at some of the other guys that had those, like that many targets, like Justin Jefferson catch percentage, like 69, CeeDee Lamb, 69, Diggs, 70, Tyreek Hill, 70. Garrett Wilson, 56. Like it is not on Garrett Wilson. He's a really good wide receiver. He runs great routes. He's explosive after the catch. He's got great hands. I think this is like going to be a heck of a 1-2 punch. And if you get Garrett Wilson, you're going to be fine. He's going to be a solid wide receiver 1 this year. And I think Lazard is sneaky too. It's like, because they're familiar with each other. 2 years ago when Adams was on the squad, it was actually Lazard who led the team in red zone targets. So he could be a guy that maybe only catches 50 passes for, 700 yards, 750 yards, but he could have 8 to 10 touchdowns. Like that would not shock me at all. So yeah, the Jets, I'm not in on Rodgers as a super flex league potentially, but I don't want him to be my QB1 in leagues where you only roster one starting quarterback in a 12-team league. I'm just not there. I like to get a rushing quarterback, and he's not going to bring that to the table. When he has stinky games, he has a game with like 1 touchdown. It's going to be like 12 fantasy points. When Josh Allen or Fields or Burrow, maybe not so much Burrow, but like even Lawrence, these guys have a 1 touchdown game. They're still going to have like 18 fantasy points because they ran for a touchdown. I like the Jets. I'll get your thoughts on the division winner as we wrap up. Finish off here with Miami. We got Tua and the Dolphins here, 9.5. Another team, 9.5. It's like 7 teams with 9.5 win total in the AFC. Not everyone's going to win 10 games, but AFC East, they're 3-1 to win the division, 14-1 to win the conference, and the Super Bowl, we're just crossing them off, I guess. George is like, screw it. Miami's not going to win the Super Bowl. Not even going to give you any odds there. I believe they're like 80-1 to win the Super Bowl. I'll confirm it in a second. Their weapons, 3 backs, and also linked to Dalvin Cook. Tua going as quarterback 10. Devon A-Chain's the guy they drafted this past year. Ton of speed on this squad, and he just fits in as RB39. Raheem Mostert as RB53. Jeff Wilson as RB56. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 4. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 11. Durham Smythe there as tight end 38. Just wanted to show that they do have a tight end. I don't think they want to draft him, but they do, in fact, have a starting tight end. And there's no real room here for a third wide receiver. They used Tyreek and Waddle consistently. I really liked Mike McDaniel in this system. I really liked him as a play caller. They had guys in motion. And as I mentioned, they played with a ton of speed. Tyreek Hill showed us that he is indeed quarterback proof. In his first season without Patrick Mahomes, all he did was rack up 1,700 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, 170 targets, which was just behind Justin Jefferson and Devontae Adams. He caught 119 of those passes. And Jalen Waddle as well. An elite season from him. Both of these guys were wide receiver 1s. Waddle was a low-end wide receiver 1, but he still finished just under 1,400 yards, which was 7th among wide receivers. Both guys studs, and I expect both guys to be studs. I'm worried about Tua, like I'm sure you are, and everybody else. But we did see, as I mentioned, quarterback proof. When Tua went down, like even Skylar Thompson or Teddy Bridgewater, Tyreek Hill's still 8. Jalen Waddle's still 8. Those guys still got targets. The play calling was great. They found ways to get the ball in their hands in space. Mike White is the backup there now, so an upgrade, I suppose, over Teddy and Skyler if Tua does go down. But I don't know, like, are you worried? Are you drafting any Tua? I don't have too many shares of Tua because I am concerned, man. Like, I'm rooting for this guy, but one more concussion and it could be all over for him in the NFL. I hope it's not.
Yeah. I'm not worried. I mean, any player with the rules now, any player could get tripped and bang his head and they're in trouble. And
true.
He hasn't had one in months and months. Obviously, we're not going to get into my opinions on it because it gets ugly on social media. But
here, I'll just give you this. You're on the board: Tua, Dak, Daniel Jones, Deshaun Watson. Tua, Dak, Daniel Jones, Deshaun Watson. Are you gonna?
I think I'd probably take Watson before him. With all the whatever the real life stuff aside, he's proven that he can run. Last year was not who he is. Now he's had a full off season as the one, full training camp as one, and he's not that old, right? And he's certainly not banged up because he hasn't played football. But I think we see the Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson. I'm really high on Deshaun. I love Tua, and I love him because of the offense he's playing in. McDaniels is a wizard. He's a coach that, and this is more of a thing, a new school thing, right? Like, he has like an idea, but he coaches to the personnel that he has. He's got game-breaking speed at a bunch of different positions. Mostert, I mean, I don't know if you've heard this or not, but he was a track star. This
they're all speedy, man. All these,
they're all fast, every single one, right? And moving them all over the field, stretching it, like it's hard to defend, and that we saw it even without Tua, how good Waddle and Tyreek can be because you got to pick your poison. You can't double them both. And I'm thinking, like, if I'm looking at the flex draft from this weekend, I think I'd be real excited if I got Tyreek Hill there at the 9.
Oh yeah. I think you should. I think
I'd be real excited about it.
I don't think he's going to last. But you're right. You never know with these live drafts. It could be people could really like their running backs, and he's there. For me, he's a top 5 pick. I'm taking those wideouts, and then I'm getting into CMC, Eckler, and Kelsey, and then I'm thinking about that next tier with AJ and Diggs and CD and Garrett Wilson and company. But yeah, I think you should be. Tyreek Hill is a cheat code. This guy is awesome. I had him last year with Justin Jefferson.
One of my favorite players to watch.
Pretty stinky, and they just like carried me. He wants 2,000 total yards. He's a beast, man. He's so explosive. Yeah, him and Waddle are fantastic in this offense. Both of those guys, don't be worried about any of them. I think as we get out of here, I would take shots on these backfields. A-Chain's really driving up the draft board. I feel like
I love Jeff Wilson.
Yeah,
they trust him.
They do. I think this is going to be a full-on committee, just like San Fran. With McDaniels being with Shanahan and Houston and Atlanta and San Fran, it's a very similar offense. They use all these running backs. Wilson and Mostert are former Niner guys that McDaniel brought over. There is something to be said about, drafting a guy, right? He finally drafted a running back, so they must have plans for him. They must really like him. And yeah, he does come with a ton of speed. I think he is really tall,
he's
really
not
small.
Going to run the ball. He's going to be a gadget guy.
I think in the second half, he could be a nice little player that you put in flex and PPR formats potentially. But I think, Mostert here at RB53 or Wilson at RB56, just to take a flyer on them at the moment. They're even falling deeper than that because the rumors of Dalvin Cook. It's risky, but it's also not because it's super cheap. And it's towards the end of your draft. And if it doesn't work out and they bring in Cook, you just move on. And that's it. But man, what a division. This is going to be very competitive. We can see 3 teams here from this division make it. We're going to get out of here on the final note. Who wins the division?
Bills.
Jets a playoff squad?
Yes.
Are the Dolphins a playoff squad?
Yes.
Oh, baby. We're going to do some other AFC division previews. So somebody's got to be out. I think I agree with you. I think that the Bills win, the Jets make the playoffs, and the Dolphins are right there. Like, they may get 10 wins and maybe not get in, but I like the over on all the win totals that we brought to you with all those 3 teams. We're going to get out of here. We'll be back on Thursday. We have 2 more AFC divisions to preview, and then we'll be doing some drafts as we lead up to week 1 of the NFL season. At the Eric Young, at Chris Meaney. Appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out. Any questions, leave them there. We'll get to them on Thursday. Have a good one. Cheers.